You're live.
All right, and then just let it run in the background. I'll be monitoring it, and I'll let you know if I see anything. So,
All right. Thank you, George.
should we wait until I see it pop up?
Amanda
Yeah.
is in the waiting room, I believe.
Well,
Oh, I
thank
see
you.
it. All right, and then just let it run.
Thank you.
All right. Let me get Amanda in here. See, this is where it gets a little weird. Oh, so I don't need to share my screen with you anymore, do I, George?
Right, you can stop that.
Okay. Thank you. Get out of there.
The wheel goes round and round. round.
All right, so that allows me to get to my participants. And there's Amanda. We have not started yet, Amanda, just so you know. We're just getting the technology all smoothed out.
Hi, Amanda.
Hello. Should change my name. Okay.
Should be the Amanda and Caleb show.
Are we
Yeah.
ready to go live from SoCal? Are we ready to
We're
go
ready.
fly? Pilot George? Okay.
Yeah, we're live. We're live.
Okay, very good. So let's get this meeting to order. I'm going to call this meeting to order right now. First, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you could bring up the flag, and we will do the pledge. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the
and to
republic
the republic
for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and
with liberty and
justice
justice for all.
Thank you. All right, gang, let's do a roll call. Linda?
Trustee Rodriguez,
Here,
Trustee Jackson Miller,
Here.
Trustee Izant Gonzalez,
Here.
Trustee Friedman,
Present.
Trustee Donley.
Virtually present.
Thank you.
Next order, is there a motion to adopt the agenda as it stands?
I move.
Okay, Phil first, second,
I'll second. Carolyn.
Carolyn. Okay. All in favor as it stands?
Aye. Aye.
Roll call.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, and any nays? No. All right. Unanimous. Consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda as it stands? And there will be a roll call because there is a resolution with the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I will
I
make.
move. Second.
Okay. Linda, can we do a quick roll call?
Trustee Rodriguez,
Aye.
Trustee Jackson Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Izant Gonzalez,
Yes.
Trustee Friedman,
Aye.
Trustee Donley.
Aye. Do we have any public communications out there?
We
Nothing.
do not have any public communications that I'm aware of, Ted, although not exactly sure how we want to time this up, but SEA they had intended to have representation on this side of the meet tonight.
Okay.
But like a lot of people out in the community, they've had impact by the fire. And so not seeing them here, I'm assuming that that's the reason Gordon had indicated he planned to attend.
Yes.
But he's actually in the area where they're impacted and had to evacuate. And so they had written a really nice letter
Yes.
in regards to racial justice and educational equity. I know that you had suggested that he read it during, the SEA report. And so But him not being here, not sure if you want to read that now.
Well, no,
or-
out of respect for him, I would like him to read it and be present because it is a great letter and I'm sure everybody's read it. So maybe next meeting he could read it for us.
Sounds good.
Okay, so, and also I even mentioned that if he could have done it during the SEA reporting out, but okay, so no public communications, standing reports. Let's start off with our assistant superintendents. I see Jessica out there. Is Michelle present?
Yeah, and I'll just say real quick on that note, Michelle has obviously been impacted.
Right.
Lives in near one of the fires and will not be attending tonight, but we have plans to cover her material. And so I'm sure we'll all keep positive thoughts for her. And then Jessica is on, and then just to make everybody aware where she's at, there's usually about a little 4-second delay. So if you kind of just wrap your mind around that, we'll just pause when it's her turn to talk.
Okay, well, it is actually her turn. We usually start off with the assistant superintendent. So we'll start off with Jessica.
Thank you. I'm happy to be reporting tonight. I just want to start off by saying that I know our community and staff members have been impacted by some of the community events and some unknowns, especially right now. We had some knowns that were going to be a challenge, and now we have some unknowns that are a challenge for many of our community members and our staff members. So I just want to acknowledge that when I highlight some of the things that we've been doing, I don't want to push aside all of the complications that our community is going through right now. I want to report on a few things tonight, and I will do those in presentations. But what is outside of those presentations that I'd like to just comment a little bit about tonight was the start of school year. The initial days of the school year began with non-student days and some really amazing work that our staffs were doing with their site administrators and with our district administrators. And then rolling into August 12th through the 17th, where we started school and we were checking in with our students. And all of those check-in days really revolved around building relationships and routines. And those check-ins were created by our own staff for our own staff to build consistency and practices of building relationships as a common foundation for what we all believe in. We started to build procedures on those days. And when those check-ins were over, we had staff members who created self-developed sessions and modules of professional development for their colleagues. And I think we had approximately 30 offerings by our staff for our staff on that day, on those days. And then we built in collaboration times for our teams, our site teams, our grade level teams, our subject matter teams, our district-wide teams, our leadership teams on those days to really build some collective capacity around supporting students and families in our community. So I could not be more proud of them. They've done some amazing work, and we're as ready as we can be to start this unusual year.
Sorry, let's move on to Scott. You're muted too.
Pulled a Turnbull. Sorry about that. Most of what I'll be covering, most of what I would have talked about tonight will be covered in items like what Jessica mentioned. We have the first day report, first week report. And so I'll be talking a lot about that later. I also would just like to let everybody out there who's impacted by the fires and everything that's going on in our community right now, that we're thinking of them and trying to find resources. A silver lining is this just, I think we should all really be proud to be a part of this county where everybody pitches in. And if it's happening in North County, South County tries to figure out how we can help and vice versa. So, and then the other thing I'd like to mention is that the deadline has come and gone for new community members to put their name into the ring to be considered for a board seat. And so nobody else put their name in the ring, and our 3 board members whose terms are coming to an end did put their name in. And so we'll move forward with this board for at least the next 2 years. And I'm really pleased with that, not only for the continuity, but just knowing how committed all 5 board members are, and that we get to continue in that. And not the least of which, a good reason is it saves the district about $50,000 not having to have the election.
Okay.
So win-win. That's all for me.
Okay, so do we have anybody from CSEA out there?
No.
Okay. And SCA, nobody showed up for that? And then we'll move Gordon's letter to, or I should say SCA's letter till next meeting, if you would let Gordon know that as well. And then trustees, I'm going to start off with Phil. Anything to report out on?
I'll defer my report to a future meeting, but thank you everyone for being here and what you're doing. The pandemic, the power shutdowns, and now the fire. So thank you.
Okay, I'll move on down to Jen. I'm going the Brady Bunch way, you know, with the boxes here.
Of course you are, of course. I'll just echo what Phil said. Just great appreciation for all of our community right now, and I look forward to hearing the letter being read aloud and diving deeper into that in the future. And just my heart goes out to everyone right now.
Thank you. Carolyn.
My heart also goes out to all the people in our community impacted by the fires. And I know there's a lot of people, if not directly impacted, their family members or friends are impacted. So just hope that everyone stays safe. I also want to thank our community of teachers and staff for the smooth start to this challenging new year, and also the families and students. I know that it hasn't been easy. So I just appreciate everyone's flexibility and creativity in creating a welcoming new year for everybody. And in terms of the events that I attended, let's see, there was the Child Care Task Force. There was the New Brighton Middle School virtual meeting for new families, and also the district-wide kickoff. That's it from me.
Thank you very much. Amanda, do you have anything to report out on? Amanda? Am I loud enough? Hi.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Echoing the same, of course. Just thinking of all of us going through all of these challenges, and so grateful that, you know, our district and so many of our surrounding districts have been doing the work, thinking about the adverse childhood experiences and how that impacts kids and social emotional learning, and, you know, realizing that everything that we're going through now is going to have these ripple effects that go on and on and on. And so I'm so glad that we are a place that thinks of educating the whole child and treating everyone like family. And that was, of course, evident in the annual Welcome Back breakfast, even though it was a virtual event. I really appreciated everything Scott had to say, and just really showing the connection and the deep care that everyone in this district has for each other. So that's all I've got to say, but it's good to see all of you.
Thank you. I have nothing to report out on. And again, I will give my thoughts out to the family community members that have to evacuate, and especially, you know, the school districts, and just, I mean, just the evacuation downtown Santa Cruz is just all RVs, and the Civic Center set up as a shelter. So it's been a stressful time for our community, not only for, you know, fires, but COVID, but our thoughts go out for them too. We're going to move on to our presentations. which is a discussion regarding racial justice and educational equity. I want to say equity. Scott, unmute.
I will go ahead and share my screen for that presentation. Let me give me just a second to get to the right place. So of course, we started the school year earlier this year, as we've had a few laughs over several months ago. That seemed like the most controversial and angst-driven topic of moving the school year up to August 12th. And of course, we've dealt with a lot of other issues that have kind of pushed that into the background. But that being said, we have had a successful start to the school year, starting on August 12th, lining up with Santa Cruz City Schools. And of course, that puts us on pace to end the school year right around Memorial Day in May 2021. And so we're on track for that. And topics that we'll cover tonight, just kind of what led up, and I'll go through these fairly quickly. Just kind of what led up to the first day, including the return to learn plan, the multi-phase distance learning plan, all the communications that have gone out, distance learning, some nuts and bolts, the kickoff that was previously meant.
Mm-hmm. Scott, actually, 5A was the racial.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh boy. All right. I'm glad you're paying attention. I wasn't, Ted. I'm so sorry. We're gonna backtrack
on the agenda. That's fine.
Yeah, gonna backtrack to racial justice and educational equity. I was so gung ho for the first day of school. So this has been a topic, obviously, that the board and school community has been very invested in. Racial justice and educational equity, I would say, for a long time. But what really kind of brought it into particular focus was all the events that have happened recently, including the murder of George Floyd and others. And so just for a quick background, the board brought this to a level that we've decided to address it at every board meeting, so that we don't lose any traction or momentum on it. The board passed a resolution on it. The board read a governance brief titled Educational Equity, the Need for Boards to Support Equity-Based Decisions. And so tonight I thought I would update where we are as we move forward in this quest to become an organization that is particularly focused on racial justice and educational equity. So we've started the formation of a racial justice task force. I've reached out to SEA, to CSEA, to administrators, and starting to reach out to all the different stakeholder groups to build that team. We'll also have parents on that team. So as I tend to try to do with a lot of these kind of committees and task force, try to keep it as tight as possible in terms of numbers so it doesn't get unwieldy, but also as representative as possible. So we'll try to hit that sweet spot. And as I've told people, that there will be subcommittees and outreach to other groups. So it doesn't mean that if you're not on the task force that you won't have a chance to participate. Everybody will have a chance to participate. This will kind of be the group that leads the effort. So we're in midstream on forming that task force and trying to make sure it's representative of the school community as a whole. We had a response to a concern that was brought to us by a parent at Main Street School, and it was about the school's mural. There's attachments included. So the parent had essentially, I know I've shared this before, so I'll be brief, but had essentially said when she walks by with her 5-year-old son, who's African-American, her son told her, "There's nobody on the mural that looks like me." And so, of course, that would hit a nerve at any time. It hit a nerve even more so now. And so we went back and looked at it. Principal Ronnie Platt did a community survey that tried to take it past that superficial level and ask more like, what would the community like to see in the mural? What came through in that is not only the African American images, but also images of students who are differently disabled or differently abled, excuse me. And so our very own art teacher at New Brighton Middle School, Roy Segura, had painted the original mural and agreed to make the updates. And you can see those on the following pages showing that additional inclusiveness. We identified racial justice as a focus point in the kickoff. We have a pretty good track record the last 4 or 5 years of, being mindful of not overdoing our commitments, but really identifying a focus point for each year and sticking with that and doing something about it. And so building on that track record, we made this topic of racial justice a focus point for the year. We've reached out to consultant Nicole Anderson, who happens to be one of the authors of the governance brief that the board read at a previous board meeting and discussed. Also, Nicole was a lead presenter at the AXA Equity Institute that many of our administrators went through from 2017 to 2019. We reached out to her and we'll consider a contract. You will consider a contract with her for helping to lead us on this mission at a later agenda item. And we've also allocated $2,500 to each school site to work with the stakeholder groups, including obviously staff and parents, to augment their libraries with a particular focus on equity and racial justice. And so those are the tangible steps that we've taken since our last meeting. And with that, open it up to any questions or comments from the board.
Did you want to share the mural on
Sure.
screen?
Yes, thank you, Ted.
There we go. And that's the mural that and Scott was talking about. Is there any comments or questions out there from the board? If there is none, is there anybody, from the public that has any questions or comments?
And I'll be checking
Okay.
on my phone for texts. And I do not see any texts.
And I don't have any emails.
Okay. Well, I like the mural. And where is it displayed at Main Street?
Right at the front, if you drive, when you drive off of Main Street and you drive all the way up to the building, it's right on that front building before you ever go to the office or anything.
Great. Okay. Thank you for that presentation, Scott. And then now we will go to opening day 5B.
Okay, back on track. Thank you, Ted. Sorry about that. So we had been talking about the topics that we'd be covering. And again, I'll be as brief as possible because we've been over some of this, but there is an ebb and flow like leading up to opening day. And so try to build that context in there with all of those items. And then Jessica had touched on some of the items such as professional development that kind of went hand in hand with the opening of school. And then of course we have some of the really important nuts and bolts like meals and technology and supplies. So those will be the topics we briefly cover tonight as we talk about the opening of school. Opening earlier than we have, at least in the past recent memory, and opening under conditions that I'll venture to say we've never opened under. So we've had two key documents through this, and whenever you're communicating out with large number of stakeholders, you always try to walk the line between giving all the information you can without just a total overwhelm, right? And so we've tried to be mindful of that, trying to hit the sweet spot, sometimes succeeding, sometimes not, but we've kind of relied heavily on two plans. One started off the reopening schools plan, and then of course when we shifted away from hybrid to a distance learning only mode, we kind of rebranded it the return to learn plan. And then ever since this has gone into effect way back in March, Jessica has led the effort to have a multi-phase distance learning plan, very mindfully labeling it multi-phase, knowing that this wasn't a one-shot deal and that we'd go through multiple iterations and it would need to be a living document. We've really stressed that these are living documents and open to change, and for the most part, folks have been flexible and understanding, knowing that we're working under guidelines that change day to day. So those we've tried to get out and have different conversations, including town halls and podcasts, and ongoing communication using those as our base. And then you see all the different ways that we've tried to communicate, making sure that different channels, tend to resonate with different groups more than others. So trying to make sure we have as many different channels for folks to tune into as possible. I'll say that light box on the website is a seemingly small thing, but one of the things that I think has helped take that potential overload of information and condense it down to when someone logs onto our website, they get immediately hit with the most current and meaningful documents. We identified some nuts and bolts that included staff safety, staff flexibility, childcare, and school offices. We tried to be really mindful of the fact that everybody's juggling a lot. Many of our staff have school-age children, and so we made the decision to allow teachers, for example, to either teach from their classroom or from their home, because for some people it's way more convenient because of their network capability or many other reasons to teach from their classroom. Some people, for childcare and other reasons, it's way more reasonable to teach from their home. So we've given staff that flexibility, of course, with lots of guidelines and passive monitoring, check-in for the staff that do decide to come to school. Carolyn mentioned earlier the Child Care Task Force. That's been one of those groups that we've tried to make pretty well rounded and representative of our school community. And one great thing that's come out of that is the City of Capitola's out of school time program, which has just been really positive in so many ways, serving our families, looking for ways to offer scholarships, really being tuned in to not just offering random daycare, but daycare that fits with this very unique state of the educational world that we're in, and really working hard to find ways to reduce costs and offer scholarships. And then school offices, that's the hub of any school. We knew that they still need to be open and be a place where parents can get information, but those staff also deserve to be in the safest environment possible. So we have them open, but not like open to the public. There's always one rotating staff member in. And so one staff member will be working remotely, one will be working in the office, and parents can have appointments, parents can call in, parents can email. So we've tried to find the best balance between that great customer service model to the public, but also realizing that office staff, we want them as safe as possible too. As was mentioned before, we had our kickoff and tried to recreate the feel-good environment that usually is in a digital environment, and not quite the same, but we did what we could. And then we get to the hard and fast numbers. Our numbers are down this year. You can see hovering around 1775 for enrollment. And those numbers for the first day attendance have gone up. Now we're in, today was about 1,735. And so we're starting to see like a more typical trend of students who are absent, and we are taking attendance now. And so, but those numbers are low, and we'll continue to, staffs have been great, principals and their office staffs have been great about calling every single family. We were expecting more of the narratives that maybe have been floated around in the general community about parents opting into private school and that sort of thing. And there have been a few, but it hasn't been in huge numbers. Private schools obviously are in the same boat that we are right now. And so there's obviously just a lot of fluidity right now in our community and all communities, as families have to deal with loss of income, loss of jobs. And so we expected the numbers to be a little bit lower than the 1,900 we were at about last year. But we'll continue to try to go beneath the surface and make sure that every family that hasn't yet been in contact with school, we either find out where they are or get them engaged with our school. Jessica mentioned before that the start of school wasn't just a start of school for students. We tried to honor the fact that with SB 98 and the regulations around that this version of distance learning was going to be different than the last version, and that teachers needed they really needed two things: training and time to collaborate. And Jessica's met with a subcommittee of the district leadership team, and they did phenomenal work on making that vision a reality. And this is just one sample of a day, of what teachers had a choice. They could choose between engaging in synchronous learning with Seesaw. That's an app that is really popular with primary teachers, a Nearpod, which is a platform, digital portfolios for assessment, and then Google Classroom Basics. So you can see that depending on where a teacher is, they could find something in that particular little subset was of something that resonated with them. Just like teachers do with students, there's no judgment. We know teachers are all over the place. Some are really geared in towards technology. Some weren't when this whole thing started. And so the idea is that there's something for everybody, and it's differentiated. And so just really thankful for that team and for Jessica's leadership on it. There's obviously a lot of things that go on, and it's, to put it in one slide is probably giving it short shrift, but for the sake of time, we are now over 34,700 meals is what was given, distributed during the seamless summer. And so now we're back to regular times where, students are either receiving a meal if they're on free and reduced, or families are paying for it. But since just about the time COVID struck us to just about the time school started back for us, we had the ability to give a school meal to any family with a child. And the idea from the federal government on down was to take away some of the barriers and just make sure families are fed. And we were so thankful for that. And for our little district in that short of time to serve nearly 35,000 school meals is just phenomenal. On Chromebooks, George just sent me the numbers the other day, and I didn't commit them to memory, but I know it was over 1,100 if I remember. And again, we just shared the number of students enrolled in our district. So that of course includes some families with multiple Chromebooks. Might have three kids in the family. Mom and dad are working remotely from home and need extra devices. And so due to planning way before COVID from our friends in tech and business, we were in a good situation to have plenty of Chromebooks to meet not only the basic need, but to be able to accommodate families with multiple students. The business services team and others have been putting a lot of time making school supply bags. And to me, the most rewarding part of it is how customized it's been. One of the beauties of being in a relatively small district is that you can get a lot of input, and we've gotten input from all different grade spans on what they want their students to have at home, and really been able to customize that. So Michelle and her team have just done a phenomenal job with that. They're still putting them all together, and schools are planning distribution times. And then of course, all the cleaning for the facilities and what our custodial and maintenance staffs do to keep us up and running in any normal time, let alone in this new time where we're learning about all the new disinfecting guidelines. And then really from this point forward, it's continued monitoring. Probably like many of you, I try to go daily to see what the numbers look like from the Santa Cruz Health Service Agency. And as you well know, and more evidence that things change, if not every week, every day, the county is now off the the state public health monitoring list, but with still a lot of hurdles to clear before our district or any district in the county could consider going back to in-person learning. And so could go on and on, but with that, I'll stop and take questions and comments.
All right, thank you. I'll open this up to the board. If anybody has any questions or comments, please hop in.
I had a question about if staff wanted to continue to learn about some of the possibilities with distance learning, like the portfolios. Maybe at the kickoff, they did the Google Classroom Basics. Are there possibilities for them to continue to gain skills in those areas?
Absolutely, twofold on that. And then if Jessica wants to tag on anything when I'm done, she can probably add on even more. But I would say really twofold. Our professional development plan for the year, we have the staff development days baked into the calendar, and we have several Fridays that are geared towards, staff development. And so those days will be continued to have similar kind of offerings. And also the County Office of Education continues to offer lots of trainings on distance learning as well. So yes, this is not a one-shot deal. Teachers will continue to have the opportunity to sharpen their skills in this area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else? I'll start at Phil. Yeah.
So thank you for the communications. It's been everywhere. So I believe it's our messages are accessible to all our parents and the public who needs to know. And I will tell you that, you know, some of these things have the content is great. It's not the most exciting thing. And I have to tell you, thank you to whoever is doing the graphic design because it makes it very approachable.
Absolutely. And I'd say that's a team effort. A lot of times from tech, but that's a team effort. Thanks, Phil.
Sorry, Timmy fell in the well. Anybody else? Let's see. We're Jen or Amanda. There we go. Yeah, Amanda.
All right. Yes, I unmuted, so I will say something. Hold on, now I have to gather my thoughts. I had a question about the child nutrition, Scott. Have there been any challenges getting folks who might need the lunch to be able to apply and fill out the forms because we don't have the same in-person paper-based capacity? So
it's always a little bit of a challenge to get everybody to turn in their applications. One of the, depends on how you look at it, but a positive in terms of data collection, let's say it that way, is that we have more families that qualified without having to fill out the application by having qualified for other state aid, right? And so we get those lists and those families automatically qualify. And so we have a much higher number of that pre-qualification than we've had in previous years. We're definitely not batting 1,000 in terms of getting the applications in. And so I would say that is a typical struggle as it is in other years. But to just add one more thought to that question, to the answer to that question, is we have seen a significant dip in families coming by to get free meals since we've had to go back to this other system, to the more traditional system. And that is something I was just talking to Kathy with today about how we can better message that. We're doing 2 days a week rather than every day. And again, it's not just a y'all come. And so I think we need to do a better job of messaging that because we expected the numbers to go down, but not so far down. And so I think it's just an ongoing challenge to make sure everybody knows what they do and do not have access to.
Okay, thank you. And then just a comment from me on the school supplies. I got to see what my own student got to pick up, and it really was a really nice, thoughtful bag. And it sort of felt like school, you know. you can try to create a little nook in your house and make it feel like the first day of school, but seeing those supplies, you know, carefully packed and thoughtful, that was a really nice thing to see. I didn't quite realize it would be like that, and I appreciate it. That's
I'll
it
have
for
to
me.
share some pictures with the board of the teams and the kind of assembly line of putting all those together. And I think it goes hand in hand with what you just said. There's a certain positive feeling tone for students to get the bag, and there's a certain like je ne sais quoi of teams all pitching in together and putting those bags together. So silver linings.
All right, thank you. This may be a no-brainer question for me, but are the teachers allowed to bring their kids to the classroom while they instruct?
Oh, good question. Yeah, that was part of the nuts and bolts that we put out. And so short answer is yes.
Oh,
and so
okay.
what we've asked, we limit it to school age children because we figure that's where this whole COVID thing has impacted is you kind of try to line out your life and you think, okay, my children are going to be in kindergarten, I can go back to work, that sort of thing. And then this throws a big monkey wrench in it. So we've tried to make that accommodation. We do have parents sign off for a waiver because it is a unique situation to have a student that's not enrolled at the school. And so everybody's been super cooperative with that. And I think we've hit a real sweet spot with that. There's no easy way, and that doesn't solve every problem, because can you imagine trying to teach, your classroom of 5-year-olds, and you got your 5-year-old and your 10-year-old in the classroom, and no matter how great of kids they are, they're going to need mom or dad's attention. So it doesn't solve every problem, but it's the best middle ground that we can meet.
All right, good. And then one more thing, and this may be a union issue, but has there been talk or thought about one teacher teaching multiple subjects? So, one teacher teaching, first, third, and fourth to a family that has multiple kids in the class in different grades.
Well, so I will say that that's sort of the model with our Opal Cliffs home-based learning model, and that's going to be talked about a little bit later tonight.
We'll get there too.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Little House in the Prairie.
There you go.
Okay.
I see Linda's hand up.
I have an email from the public, if I can read that. The question?
Please.
Okay, let me find it, so hang on a second. Okay, so it says here, this is from someone in the community. It says, while giving out Chromebooks is wonderful and an amazing achievement for this district, they are functionless without access to internet. Is there a plan in place to ensure students have such access?
100%. Oh, I always do that. I'm not going to answer.
Oh, okay. That's the only one I have as of right now.
It's an important point to consider. I think I can just say that.
Okay, with that, thank you. I think it's safe to say we can move on to 5C, our presentation regarding the hybrid summer learning program, ESY, with Jessica.
Thank you. Well, I would just like to start by saying I'd like to make a tiny comment on the last agenda item, and that is that the supply lists were actually born from a conversation amongst teachers about creating equity among students in our district and providing them an office and study kit that would be consistent for students across our community. So I really want to give those teachers credit for pioneering the idea and for us really following through with our commitment to our students. So I just wanted to say that. And thank you. I'm happy to be presenting tonight on our extended school year program. And while it ended less than a month ago, it seems like so much time has passed since then. And at our previous board meeting, I did provide a brief update about the end of summer school. But tonight I'll be providing a few more details about what that program entailed. So I'd like to start by acknowledging the summer program and ESY staff who contributed their time, their efforts, and really their courageous behavior to engage in a new way of teaching and learning in a time of pandemic. So Liz, Kristen, Gordon, Sarah, Amy, Megan, Portland, Lynn, Jackie, Eric, Barbara, Enrique, Darlene, Jennifer, and Laura. I can't thank you enough for providing our community something that no other community was able to afford their students. We really were on the cutting edge of this endeavor of trying to create a new way of providing our students access to summer learning. So I just really want to thank them so much. I also want to talk a little bit about one of the things that really we had to think deeply about is what would the design look like for a hybrid program, and what would the platforms be? And we wanted to be able to serve our community in a way that they could actually manage and access what we were providing. And so that design and platform team really came up with a good plan. And it was to hold distance learning 3 days a week, and to do weekly hands-on activities 1 day a week. And that 1 day a week of hands-on activity really became the crux of a lot of conversation, but which yielded some really positive results. Each of the distance learning platform days, the students engaged in about 2 hours of synchronous and asynchronous learning time with their teacher through Google Classroom and through Google Meets. And so that was a methodology and a platform that we tried in the spring, something we carried over to the summer to see how well it would work. But the new addition to the summer hybrid program was really those in-person learning days. And those in-person learning days were going to require a lot of thoughts about the protocols for safety. And those protocols for safety were far-reaching and included every department and every staff member in our district to really think about how to maintain a very clear, concise, and manageable set of safety expectations that we would all feel confident in employing. So the first of which was to do touch-free temperature checks for every staff, every student, every day. That face masking for all students and staff were going to be essential. That we'd have safety signage in classrooms and around campuses. That we'd have hand sanitizers in each of the staff and student environments. Face shields were provided where needed. We were teaching the students how to socially distance through the use of our taped off rope in 6-foot increments. That rope ended up being successful for older students, not so much for the younger ones. And we tried what are those foam noodles that we sometimes use in our swimming pools. And we used furniture distancing protocols. We used fixed cohorting, meaning stationary groups of students that would be together. We changed our summer cleaning protocols. And then, of course, we engaged in some Keenan safety videos for our staff to ensure that they understood all of the things that would be needed to ensure the health and safety of themselves and our students. So who participated in the summer program? Students had a selection process. Students were recommended by either their current teacher or their principal. Those students would have demonstrated skill levels of approximately 6 months below grade level in language, reading, writing, and or math. They might have been difficult to engage in the spring when we went to the onset of school closure. And then they might have already been identified as a student receiving extra support and needed that continuous support over the summer. We did roster 50 students in the summer program. And we had an average of about 25 daily participants over the course of the weeks. And that was actually something that we were really happy about because we did know that there was some summer burnout. And we do also know that in any summer circumstance, that the students that are less likely to engage during the school year are going to want to engage again with us and continue learning. Our extended school year program has a bit of a different student participation guide, and those are students that are recommended by their case manager, teacher, or principal through the IEP process. We had 26 of the 44 who were invited participate, and 18 of those 26 came in on those in-person days. And it was really amazing to see what we were able to do with the students during those in-person days in both the summer program and ESY. So the exciting part was being able to see what kids actually were doing and what our staff was actually doing during that time. And I know a number of you were able to participate in some way at some level to see what students were engaged in. And so they were engaged in science and math and English language arts and visual and performing arts and social emotional learning and physical fitness and socialization, with some specifics that had to do with earth science and NGSS engineering, cubic area, long division, phonics, base 10 understanding, opinion writing, informational reading and writing, journaling, color spectrum, shading, charters, mood meters, all of the things that we actually try to build into our school day, to build into these students' summer days to make sure that they were getting their skill gaps met, but also really trying to build a well-rounded portfolio for them. In typical years, we look for academic data as an outcome, like how much did students grow in terms of their reading, or how much did they grow in terms of their writing? And that was a tertiary focus for us this year. There were really some other outcomes that we had hoped to achieve. One of which was just to re-engage students with us. And so some of the outcomes that we were able to extract from our summer program experience was that students and staff maintained or built a new student and school connection. That some of our students most in need of our support were served by the program, both programs. Students were afforded a safe environment for socialization. The district learned how to integrate safety protocols in small scale learning environments. Students built new skills in academic areas, and most relevantly in language, reading, writing, and math and science. Students were provided meals to take home each day. The community conveyed trust in us by allowing us this opportunity, and we really could see a commitment to that trust as families dropped off their students and felt and actually spoke to us about their gratitude for providing a summer program as they dropped off their students through our safe drop off every day. And then we were used as a county model. Our county superintendent came to view our program on 2 occasions, and on one occasion bringing a filming crew to actually show and demonstrate what schools are able to do given this unique model. So we're really excited to be able to report on it. And while we're reporting on it differently than we would in other years, I think the outcomes were really extraordinary. Does the board have any questions?
So thank you. I will look for unmute for anybody who has any comments or questions.
Jessica, I just wanted to thank you for putting that program together. It just seems like it was highly successful. So I really appreciate everything you did.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you again for committing to continuing the summer program. And I visited, and it was great to be in a classroom for in-person instruction.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, hey Jessica, it's Amanda. I wanted to echo the same. I was disappointed. I wanted to visit, and then I woke up with a cough the day I was going to visit. So wisely, decided to stay home just in case. But I'm really excited about the program, and I really also appreciate that when you reported out the outcomes, you talked about what we learned from it as well. I really appreciate that, the opportunity for us as a district and how we learned from the experience is really important to always think about. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
I really like the last remark there that the county actually came in and filmed the process in the classrooms, and that's great. But I'm glad, yeah, we were able to have the summer school program, and it's quite an advantage to a lot of our students as well. And thank you very much. Is there any comments from the public?
Let me take a look.
Nothing from text.
Nothing on my side.
Very good. Thank you, Jessica. And we'll go on to the next one, which is presentation regarding Opal Cliffs home-based learning model.
Thank you again. I'm happy to report on an extraordinarily new endeavor that our district is engaging on. And I'm pleased to report on our emerging alternative education program, Opal Cliffs. We originally, 6 months ago, 7 months ago, really tried to take a look at ways of creating alternative education programs for our students. Little did we know that we would be traveling down this road in this time. But I would like to say, we've successfully moved our TK programs onto other existing campuses in some foresight about what alternative education could look like in our district. And there are times in our lives when something of unforeseen fortune does occur, and our community does need us to provide them something that they have not been provided before. And so the times and circumstances that asked us to reimagine our learning model is here now in SoCal, and we are trying to do that. The Opal Cliffs home-based learning model was designed specifically to meet the needs of families for whom the typical schedule of a virtual or a non-virtual day was not a good fit. And we looked at potential solutions and looking at surrounding districts while they had offerings of similar programs. None of them exactly met the needs that our community talked to us about. And through family meetings between principals and families, we realized that we needed to create something different and new, wherein our home-based learning program was born. And this is a foundationally student and home-centered program, which is not distance learning. And what we're finding is that, our families are understanding a little bit the differences in those, but we really needed to create some solid goals and expectations and foundations for this program. And so we do have some working drafts of our mission. And our current mission for our Opal Cliffs team is to provide a home-based learning model that affords students and families a learning pathway that is both time and activity flexible, where the family unit serves as the primary learning coach and the SoCal elementary staff serve as the educational consultants and guides. And this is a working document. It's a fluid document, but based on our community's interests and needs, it is our current mission to be able to provide this time and activity flexible model. As with anything worth doing, having a vision for where you will go and where the students will go is essential. And so our Opal community feels like their vision is this: students will build skills and experiences that will be both rigorous and relevant and be defined by the aspirations, goals, and strengths of each individual's family. And family is really an essential component in a home-based learning program. As we researched models across the country and even, across the globe, that partnership in a home-based model really is the key to success. And so we did try to define that home and school partnership. And this model is largely home-based. All children and students will be a member of the Opal Cliffs community, not just the students. And we know that this community is a diverse one, and it will be comprised of students and families in grades, really transitional kindergarten through 8 at this point, and will include our district employees. And it'll be our responsibility to support every family through this program. What we found in talking to families is that every family's interest is not exactly the same. And so we really have to craft a way of providing them a pathway that works for their family. And after the first meeting that our staff had with families, we found that there are families who want to do project-based learning. They want to do, questioning and engaging kinds of experiences, while out in diverse areas of our community. And then we have others who would really like a more curriculum-based model and more textbook-based model. So we have a very vast membership of our partnership right now. But the students do have to have a schedule. We do have Senate Bill 98 that says there are some components that we actually have to address, and all public schools have to do that. So there are weekly check-ins with every family, between the family, which means the student unit, and their parents or who's home with them, their guardian, and our staff, our coaches. And then there will be daily check-ins as well, just like with every classroom, but in a different way. So they may not be a synchronous check-in, but they'll be check-ins through either email, and they'll be either individualized or small group or large group in nature. But we're really building this as we go, and we're trying to meet the needs of our families as we connect with them. I think it's important to note that our staff really is a very small staff. We have 2 teachers on special assignment who are the teaching coaches for families in this model. Susan Denham, who you've probably heard me refer to before. She was previously a teacher on special assignment and was really targeting our social and emotional learning component of support for our teachers and the students in our district, that has taken on this new responsibility excitedly and innovatively. And Lori Kearney, who has previously been at Main Street and an amazing teacher. And so many of our community members know her and her incredible passion for this work. And then I, of course, am the administrator overseeing this new program. And I have a great passion for those students whose learning needs to be met in different ways other than the traditional track. So our student body right now is actually at 53 students in grades K through 8. Our enrollment at this time through our elementary schools is 43 students, and our enrollment from the middle school is about 10 students. This far surpassed our initial goal. Our goal was, if we can get 12 students, we feel like we're doing well. And certainly 53 was far beyond our expectation. And so we are learning and growing as we go to really address the diverse interests of these 53 families. And we know that it's really not 53 families. We have many families who have students in multiple grades, who have different learning targets for their students because there's different standards by grade. But our teachers on special assignment are working with each family to address the standards for each child's grade, but knowing that in a given family, if they have multiple students in different grades, how those learning activities can be the same, but address the standards for the students that the grades are in. So it's really a complex set of goals that we have for our staff and our families. And it's a fun time and it's an anxiety-provoking time, but we're really excited about being able to offer this alternative education program. So with that, I'm sure there's lots of questions. I have questions too, as do our families and our community kind of at large. Like, what does this look like? And we're shaping it as we go, but I'm happy to answer any questions that we have.
Okay, let's start with the board, and I will look for the unmute. Jen.
Hi, Jessica. Thanks for both of these presentations. It's really great. Just a question, are families, are they considered independent studies and signing contracts or no?
They're not independent study. It's a home-based program. It's not defined the same way. We're not delineating it the same way because students and families are checking in daily. And we do have an expected number of minutes. We do have like personalized learning designs that we're creating with each family during those weekly check-ins. So it's not independent study. We do have independent study available for families, and that's something just a little bit different. But this model is It's a little bit more hands-on with our coaches and our families in terms of their relationship in the learning every day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Jessica, are we using the district textbooks? That's one question. The other one is, how will we proctor the SBAC exams?
That is a great question. So there's two questions and I'll answer them separately. One is we have our distribution checkout on Tuesday with our Opal Cliff staff and their families. And we will give our students in the Opal Cliffs program the opportunity to take our district textbooks. They're not mandated use. What is mandated really is for us to do a weekly check-in and for us to assess the lessons and the learning activities of the students to ensure that they're standards based and their goals aligned with the student in the grade that they're in. But the textbooks will be available. And to the second part of the question, the CAS may or may not be administered this year, and I think we would address it the same way we would do all students in distance learning. And so really we have a virtual experience with families every week through this model. We have synchronous times and asynchronous times kind of based on that. Just like distance learning, it's just more time and activity flexible. We still are building in assessments, just like every other student. We're monitoring their progress. Some of it will be more rubric based. Meaning that we'll be looking for learning goals and targets through non-traditional measures, through some of their project-based learning. But the CASP, I'm not sure that we're going to be administering it this year. I'm pretty sure I could say we're not.
So will all the students
Did that
have the
answer
option
your-
of using, will all the students have the option of using a textbook?
Yes.
District-wide?
Yes.
Okay. So how do we know that when we come back from this, that everybody will be on the same page if only some people are using our textbook?
Well, that's where our TOSAs are going to be really kind of working with every family weekly. The way that they've built out their check-ins is to basically say to each family during that check-in, what are the standards you're working on? What are the activities that meet those standards? And then show us what the outcomes are. And then they're actually doing an assessment, a check-in to say, well, you're on track to meet that standard or you're not. But they have to do those weekly check-ins and they have to actually give an update on where they are in the progress towards the result in those activities.
So I understand that about this program, but you just said that all 1,700 of our students will have the option of using a textbook or not.
Yes.
Okay.
So Phil, if I didn't answer your question and I apologize, is there something else that you want to know?
I just want to hope that when we get back into the classroom, that the students that chose not to use the textbook will be able to catch up to the students who decided to use the textbook.
Okay, so actually that helps me a little bit more. So when we're talking about the 1,700 students that are not in the Opal Cliffs program, they will have a very prescribed set of assignments, activities that will be supervised by their teacher, and those will be consistent across the board. For the 53 students in Opal Cliffs, that will be what is the much more self-tailored program between their family, that student, and their teacher on special assignment that's coaching them.
And if I can just offer a couple of cents on that, the great equalizer in terms of a baseline instructional program are the standards, not the textbook, right? And so one of the reasons we had the alternative model in mind for several years was the fact that there are a set of families for whom the traditional comprehensive model doesn't work. We lose families to other districts, namely city schools and Live Oak, each year because they've offered those programs and we haven't. And so having, obviously we didn't anticipate to start with 53 students, as Jessica said, but the goal is that it's a different on-ramp to the freeway of standards. And so while in the classroom it's a more traditional approach, this is a more parent-driven approach, but still teaching the same standards. I'm not sure if that addresses your question or not, Phil.
Thank you.
This is Amanda. I have a
Thank you.
question. Sorry,
No,
all
go
good?
ahead.
Okay. So since we have more students than anticipated, and it sounds like a really big and interesting and really important job, do we have adequate staffing? Are we considering adding more staff members?
Well, Amanda, that's actually an amazing question. We did actually start with one teacher. And when our interest started to grow and the conversations began to grow, we realized, I think Scott very quickly and astutely realized that there was really no turning back, and that our community really was asking us for something that we were really willing to provide. And so we went from one teacher to two teachers. We have right now kind of capped our entry point to the program for a couple of reasons. One is the number of students who are participating. And two is that we're hesitant to have students change their learning environment multiple times. And so I think we're right now, kind of given the state of the number of students, we're probably going to look at very, very little fluctuation for at least the first semester or into the first year. And we're really trying to counsel parents who are trying to enter in or looking at other pathways to say, we really need to be mindful of changing a child's learning environment over and over and over again, because we know that there are so many unknowns, and changing some of their, the practical parts of their day are not necessarily making them feel confident in their educational trajectory. So we're trying to create as much support for consistency as possible. So I feel like right now we're at a good number and a good staffing.
Okay, thanks.
Well, great questions. I'm not sure if this got touched on or not, but my question is that can families check in more than once a week if they need help?
So what we found is a number of our families like to do lots of check-ins with the teachers on special assignments. So I meet with those two teachers daily, almost daily, at the onset of this program, especially when we're building it. And they're finding that those check-ins and those questions are coming from many families on a daily or a semi-daily basis. And those teachers are always available to talk to families. They just have basically a required set half-hour increment weekly, so they can go through all of the activities, they can go through all of the standards assessments, so that they can really ensure that the students are on the right track and that the families have the support that they need.
Perfect, thank you. Any comments from the public?
Nothing on text.
Okay. Linda?
Nothing on email.
All right, well, thank you, Jessica. With that, we're going to move on to our action items. So let's move on to 6A, which we're going to consider a contract with Nicole Anderson and Associates Consulting. And I'll turn that over to Scott, I assume.
Thank you, Ted. So I'd like to bring to the board's attention just a wording error between what it says on the agenda and what it says on this memo. And so my mistake on the agenda, it says Nicole Anderson and Associations. It's correct on the memo. It says Nicole Anderson and Associates. So bad mismatch on my part there. Just wanted to bring that to the board for full transparency. And so this is very much related to the discussion item that we had earlier in the night, wanting to really put our words into action and make them operational in our effort to be a system that is as racially just and educational, have as much educational equity as possible. So as I mentioned, several of the administrators in the district went through an AXA Equity Institute a couple of years ago. And one of the key presenters was Nicole Anderson. And she really resonated with the group. I mean, obviously, just a very smart lady on this topic. But I'd say the thing, I'll speak for myself, and I think I speak for some of my colleagues. If there was one thing that I really walked away with is that she didn't candy code anything. And she said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, there's no way, to really get better in this topic without getting uncomfortable. And we literally did, activities within this institute, which had administrators from all over the county, which were intended to be uncomfortable and ask tough questions, because there's no way to move beyond the surface level on this really important topic without doing some hard self-analysis as an organization. I think that's the kind of work we need. I think we have all the momentum. When I talked to Nicole, I told her that this is a rare opportunity for a superintendent. And I really look at it as a blessing that every stakeholder group is pointing to the same thing, be it the board, be it teachers association, classified association, parent groups. There's no need to have this be a top-down initiative, right? This is something that all groups are coming together on. And so let's capitalize on it. And she was agreeable to come in and help us with some of this work, to take some of the work that we started as an administrative group and perhaps make it more operational and continue the learning within our own organization. And so I won't go through the whole proposal, obviously page by page, but I will kind of take a look at what it would entail. It would entail some work. And these are all not to exceed kind of date. So if there's 4 days listed and that particular subgroup or that particular committee works 3 days, obviously we get charged for the number of days that we actually use. And so there'd be a district and site leadership team. There'd be the racial justice task force that I've mentioned earlier, and some work with our own governance team, so that all levels of the organization are being touched and have a chance to engage with the material. Typically there's equity walks, which obviously are, key, and that's a little bit tough to do right now, but who knows what things will look like over the course of the year. And so an investment proposal, a very overview breakout is shown here. And again, these are not locked in stone, these are flexible, but these are typical for what Nicole and her associates would work with for a district in order to really make some growth and self-analysis and some operational action steps. So my humble opinion, this is the way to take us to the next level. This is a way to capitalize on the momentum, to make sure that there's no loss in that momentum, and kind of have that objective third party, kind of like a personal trainer. If we, get a little off course or we get a little focused on other things, there's that person to say, hey, remember, we said we're focusing on this year. And so with that, I obviously recommend that the board consider approving this contract and open it up for questions.
All right, are there any clarifying questions from the board before discussion? There are no unmutes. Okay, Phil.
Okay, a couple. So I think there's a typo because on my presentation it says 1 year proposal, and then 3 lines below it, it says 10 months. So I think it's 10 months because it looks like it ends on June 30th.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
I think they were being used synonymously as a school year. Yeah.
I know how it happens. And then what is the source of the funds? Is it general, unrestricted, or is this part of some one-time thing?
Well, part of the one-time money associated with learning loss mitigation. And so it's a real opportunity that we might not have had. And so if you want to look at it as a silver lining with that. And obviously this has a big impact on our students and staff's health. And so it's a perfect use of that money. And depending on how many days we get done before the end of December, when that money has to be fully expended, we may need to look for other sources, but we're confident that we'll be able to move things around to afford it.
And then the last question, on page 71, it says investment proposal. The district is not investing in her company, correct? This is an expenditure?
Yeah, yes, that's an unusual term. I will
Okay.
I will give you that. I think it's intended to say, you know, this is an investment in the district's culture, right? And
just doing the accounting thing.
Yeah. All depends on which lens you're looking through.
All right, thank you, Phil. Well, any other clarified questions? Okay.
Not a question, just a comment. This is Amanda. I believe she was one of the presenters we had at that CSBA workshop at the conference last year. And if it wasn't her, then I've read some of her materials and I found her incredibly inspiring and appreciate what she's brought at the AXA Equity Institute. So I'm really excited about this opportunity.
Thank you. It is a great opportunity.
Jen here, I want to echo what Amanda said. It's hard to believe we're saying opportunities and silver linings in this evening that we're experiencing right now, but it really is. And as Scott mentioned, it was a few years ago when we all did the Institute, and it is time to go deeper and to take some actions. And we are primed to do that. And when the next time when Gordon is available to come, we look forward to reading that letter. And so this is the way we need to go. And I appreciate that we're presented with this. So thank you.
I always forget to mention that Jen was a part of that group. She wasn't directly connected to the board at that time, but went through that same AXA Equity Institute. So she knows Nicole's work very well. And of course, you all, the governance brief you read, Nicole is one of the authors. So.
Right. Thank you.
Carolyn here. Just want to add that I'm excited about the opportunity to work with Nicole Anderson. It just seems like just the time to work on this for all of us. The one group that I didn't see represented there, and that doesn't mean that it has to be done through Nicole and her associates, but is our parents and community. I don't know if that's something that will be part of future discussions of how we can get our parents involved in that discussion as well, and if they want to kind of learn about the process as well.
For sure. They'll definitely be represented on the task force. And then as you alluded to, like, you know, those are the starting kind of baseline groups. And the expectation is those groups take it out and grow it. It doesn't end. They're kind of the teacher of teachers.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so with that, is there a motion on the floor to consider approving the contract with Nicole Anderson and Associates?
This is Amanda. I'll make the motion to approve the contract.
Thank you. Is there a second?
It's Carolyn, I'll second.
Very good. We have a first and second. Is there any more discussion with the board regarding this? And if not, any comments from the public before we go to vote?
No, I have
Okay.
nothing.
All right, and Scott, I assume you don't have any texts?
No text, no.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve. All in favor, say A.
Aye.
I mean,
Aye.
any opposed? I don't see any opposition, so it has been approved. Thank you. And let's move on to 6B to adopt the Soquel Elementary School District's 2021 original budget 45-day revision, and this is going to go to Scott.
Yes, so I'm going to step in here and again have to acknowledge a typing mistake that I made and formatting mistake that I made on the agenda. The agenda byline, the second line under this item on the agenda is mismatched and alludes to the racial justice issue. And on the memo here on page 74 of the docket, it is correct and is regarding this item is regarding the 45-day budget revision. So I apologize to the board for my mistake on that. And so obviously this would normally be Michelle's topic. I will go through it. And of course, I will probably lack a little bit of the expertise, but I will give the big picture overview. And a big picture overview before we get into the slides is that, boy, this summer, like everything else, the budget was a roller coaster. And we hit a point soon after the COVID-related school closures, where it was like, oh my gosh, how are we what's gonna happen to the economy? What's gonna happen to our school's revenue? Are we gonna have to cut staff? All those tough questions. Our district immediately formed, or very soon thereafter, formed a fiscal prioritization team so that even though these decisions were gonna be really tough and hard, we can make them together. And we were looking at a 10% cut as we went through that process. Our team was able to identify cuts without touching personnel in the district directly. And then we were made whole again, to put it very generally, and put back to our original funding pre-COVID that we had been expecting. So without the COLA. And so it was quite the roller coaster. Of course, you're going to see information about deferrals on here. Deferrals always being a little bit of a mixed bag, because while we don't have to make the cuts immediately, it's spending money that you don't have in hand, which, in the layman's terms, I guess could say it's kind of like spending money on a credit card. It's better than not having the resources, but it's a bit of an uneasy feeling. And so it really makes long-term planning. You look at the numbers, with a bit of a skewed vision. And of course, we've been through a lot of this following the Great Recession. And so with that kind of as the backdrop, that we've been through this real roller coaster and we're kind of back to square one now, when the budget was originally presented by Michelle, we didn't have that second piece of information that we were looking to be made whole again. And so hence the need to do a 45-day budget revision that is not a typical item that we do in most years. This is not like most years. And so I'll go through some of these slides kind of quickly. But of course, the national economy, this is no news to anybody, has been, quite sporadic. And if you take a look at personal income, consumer spending, and unemployment, it does not take an economist to say none of those are good. And as they often say, for the California economy, given the size of our state and the populace and all of the revenue generated here, when the nation gets a cold, California gets a flu. And you can see that is reflected in the unemployment rate, comparing the state of California to the nation as a whole. So I guess you could say thanks to a lot of people, but I venture it's safe to say that this was a big focal point of our previous governor, Governor Brown. There was a budget stabilization account that had approximately $16.1 billion, a rainy day fund, as some people refer to it as. And boy, there's never been a more important time to tap into that. And so I think we can be thankful that our state government had the foresight to have that rainy day fund. And you can see that we're drawing down on about half of it now to help get through this crisis. Of course, there's lots of risks. There continue to be lots of risks to the state budget. And that's, compounded by unemployment and the continued economic downturn. This is a little bit of a better visualization of that roller coaster that I mentioned. Back in January, everything seemed rosy. And then we hit the May revision, when whatever the opposite of rosy is, we were grappling with. And then when it all came together, we were looking at not quite as rosy as January, not nearly as dire as May. No COLA, but not a negative COLA. So hence the reason that even though we were able to identify many cuts in that fiscal prioritization team, many of them didn't have to be enacted. Just for example, one of which was furlough days. So the state relies on different groups for cost of living projection in the out years. That includes School Services of California and the Department of Finance. And you can see why it's challenging sometimes to make long-term economic predictions when the groups we lean on don't even agree with in and of themselves. And so, but these are the current projections from those two groups, School Services and Department of Finance, for the next couple of years. Deferrals are back in a big way. And, as I explained before, much better than cuts, but also, not, I think everybody could agree, not as solid as actually having the cash in hand. Here you can see for the 1920 P2 deferral, the statutory requirement for the state to issue it by July 15th. So that it has to balance out. A little bit more about deferrals and cash flow needing to balance out. Another view of that information. You can see the bottom bullet kind of puts it into one line worth of context. We'll receive about 68% of the state aid apportionment during the year. So all of this equates to the need for the 45-day budget revision. Not required, but highly advisable. And of course, something like that, we always believe better to shine to the light of day and be transparent about. You won't see that typical SACS report that you see with the pages and pages and pages of graphs. This is a more local format. So just some of the variables that went into it. We mentioned no COLA, but no cuts. The pension relief that we got, the CARES Act, other variables that fed into this this part of the getting us to this part of the budget roller coaster. So the revenue changes, it increased by nearly 1.3 million. We went from what we were looking at in May, a negative almost 8% COLA to zero COLA, which includes state aid education protection account, LCFF supplemental property tax, and in lieu charters held. There's a little bit about the changes that have occurred since the adoption and why we've needed to bring this 45-day revision. We talked about restoring the 10% reduction cuts, for example. This talks a little bit about the COVID relief funds that we even talked about earlier in our earlier action item. Learning loss mitigation, again, part of that COVID relief. Our next steps will be to audit expenses from March 20th to determine which are our match for state and federal COVID resources, close out last year's budget, and prepare the unaudited actuals for September. And then take a look at that Fund 17 to continue to mitigate the impact of impending state budget cuts. And then, of course, after all that is closed out, we can update this year's budget. So that is the 45-day budget review in a flash. And
Yeah.
we'll take any questions, and if I can't answer them, we'll get them answered.
All right, very good. Do we have any clarifying questions from the board? See, Phil?
Just a quick one, and I don't expect an answer. On the reserve fund, is it, why is it other than capital outlay projects rather than economic uncertainty? And what flavor of reserve is it going to be? And you don't have to answer now.
Okay. We can follow up on that.
All right, any other clarifying questions? And I see no unmutes, so I will go ahead and ask for a motion to consider adopting the SoCal Union Elementary School District's 2021 original budget 45-day revision.
I move.
I second.
Jen, second.
Building.
Any further discussion from the board? If not, then any comments or questions from the public?
No texts.
I had a question from the public, but it was on a prior item. I'm sorry, it came in late, so I don't know if this is appropriate time or not to just read it.
I would say it definitely needs to get read because we had acknowledged that, you know, we're all getting used to this format. I would recommend that the board take action on this item, and then we can deal with that other item.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's take action on it. And as we have first, second, is there all approve? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? None. Okay, so we approved 6B. And then with that, before we go on to correspondence, do you want to read the letter on regarding the past item?
Yes.
Okay, which
So,
item is it?
This is a question regarding racial justice and the district. It comes from a community member, and it says here, I am glad to see ongoing action in training district employees / administration / teachers in racial equity and examining our district policies. I am wondering what training or education the board itself is taking upon themselves, just as other staff are learning and developing.
So I'd like to, no response. Good question.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to correspondence. Does anybody have any correspondence they'd like to submit? None? Then any future agenda items that they would like, any board members like to request? If there aren't any, I mean, you know how to get a hold of us if there is. And okay, let's move on to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
It's
Bill?
Amanda. I'll make the motion.
Amanda, okay.
I'll second. Oh, go for it, Phil.
Second.
Phil can second.
Okay, I assume there's no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? 5. Okay, very good. And that concludes our meeting. Have a great tonight and a wonderful tomorrow. Bye now.
Stay safe.
Stay safe, everyone. Good to see you, Linda.